Today, I'm gonna open my Pelican case and show you everything that I use to film a 24-hour sports car race. Okay, so I just got back from the Daytona Rolex 20. Danny, oh baby girl. Okay, today I'm gonna open my Pelican case. I'm gonna show you all the gear that I use every time I go to the racetrack to shoot motorsports. Now, fair warning, I have not opened this since I left Daytona. And if you didn't watch my vlog, it's hard to explain how eager I was to get out of Daytona. Everything is about in the right space, but for the most part, like, I was really ready to get out of there. So I sort of packed it as fast as I could so that I could get out. So keep that in mind. Don't think bad of me. I was doing the best I could, okay? All right, here we go. Bam, there it is in all its glory. Okay, I'll start with the juiciest bits first. The thing everybody always wants to know is, what camera do you shoot with? This is the Sony FX3. I've shot on this camera for 2 years. I love this camera. It has a little NASCAR sticker. You have to have that when you run at Daytona. It has a small rig half cage on it, and I use it for basically all of my tight shots trackside. My 100 to 400 lives on this camera, and I generally, when I put it on at the beginning of the weekend, I never take it off. Some people will say, why not the FX6? I like the FX6 a lot. Originally, I wanted audio at 120 frames, and I'm not the steadiest shooter handheld, so I wanted the IBIS. You lose both of those things when you get the FX6. At some point in time, I'm sure I will upgrade, but this is super small and lightweight, and it's just been really good for me, and I just don't see any reason to change right now. Under my FX3, some little pads, and then a little pouch that I keep my viewing monitor. This lives on my FX3. It's an Atomos Ninja V. I don't think it's a Plus. Yeah, just the regular Atomos Ninja V. I used the Shinobi for a while. It was very hot. This one is a little bit cooler. I don't actually record externally. I do have the hard drive for it, but it's rare that I would record externally. So I just use it as a viewing monitor. I use the false colors when I'm doing interview. I obviously use the graphs for exposure, and this is always on my FX3. Next is my B cam setup. I use, for a wide lens, and for most of my pit lane stuff, I use the Sony a7S III. This is not the Sony a7S III, this is the Sony a7 III. I'm using the Sony a7S III to record this video, so this is just more of a prop. It does have a full cage on it. I find that camera performs extremely similar to the FX3. It doesn't have the cooling elements, and there are some pieces that are not quite as good as the FX3, but for the most part, in terms of image quality, it's the exact same. On my a7S III, most of the time is the Sigma 24-70 art lens. I had the Sony G Master 24-70 for a very long time, and I just found that I didn't like the colors in that lens. It was always a bit contrasty for me, especially in polarized light. And this 24-70 acts very similar to the bigger lens that I keep on my FX3, so I feel that they just color grade more evenly. It's significantly less money. I really, really hate that the zoom ring turns in the opposite direction from all of the Sony stuff. I find that a bit tedious sometimes when I need to do something in a hurry. But for the most part, this thing is always on my Sony a7S III. I use it in the pit lane. I use it for wide shots around the track. I love this lens. It has a circular polarizer from Polar Pro on there. It's an Indy 16 fixed Indy with the polarizing element, and I love this little setup. In with my wide lens, I've always got my Decibel earplugs. It's like a custom earplug that you can mold to your ear yourself, and you can change out some of the filters in them. So I have a percussive filter that I plug into the sort of molded piece for my ear, but I find that they work really good with race cars. Okay, next up, before we get to the big lens, I pack a lot of stuff on top of it. So I have a little peak strap that I use on my FX3. I sort of sling it over my shoulder when I'm riding on my scooter. So I have my peak strap. I have a little small rig ball head cold shoe mount that I put a GoPro mount on, and I use this on my FX3 or my a7S III when I want to show behind the scenes stuff with my GoPro. So I have an Atomos HDMI cable. I use the Atomos in the event I would ever want to record externally. This is the recommended monitor cable. It's very hefty. I have had one fail on me in the past, but for the most part, it's been pretty good to me. And then my favorite lens that I've ever owned, this is the Sony 100 to 400 G Master. I absolutely love this lens. This is my favorite lens I've ever owned. I've never tried to replace it. I've never tried, to be fair, I've never used any of the other brands. I've never used the Sigma brand, but I love this lens. It is super sharp. The autofocus is so good. It has stabilization inside, so when I'm hand holding, I find that it's super helpful, and it's just got great compression and great color. I absolutely love this thing. It also has a circular polarizer. For this one, I use an Indy 8 most of the time, but it has a fixed Indy, has a circular polarizer so I can get rid of those reflections, and I absolutely love this lens. I love that this thing has 3 buttons on all over the lens. I have programmed this off of focus hold, which is how it comes standard. And I actually use all of these buttons, all 3 of them, as a record button now. So I can be sort of hand holding my rig and not have to press any buttons on the camera. I can just press the button on the lens and it starts recording. A little clear filter I threw in, I don't know if you can tell. Occasionally for edits, I'll have drivers sign the front element of this glass. I did it for the TRC team in their long form edit. It's pretty cool little effect, and it's like 20 bucks for these things, and when they get a bit old, this is how I like to get rid of them, so that's pretty cool. Next, we'll get into my audio compartment. So this year I'm doing things a little bit differently. I have always ran the top handle and the XLR microphone on the FX3. I think there's no reason to own a FX3 if you're not going to use the good XLR audio options, but I wasn't super happy with the audio I was getting out of my A7S III. So I bought the top piece, the hot shoe piece that you can mount on the A7S III to get the same audio interface and the same microphone that I use on my FX3. And I find that that is a game changer. This year, new for Daytona, new for this year, I'm using 2 XM1 mics, one on my A7S III and one on my FX3. I like this mic, it's plenty good, but the audio interface is sort of where the real money's made. So, and then the sort of 2 audio options. So you have the top handle audio piece for the FX3, and then I use this hot shoe piece for my A7S III now, and I love that the audio options are the same on both, the audio quality is the same, and my workflow is the same on both. Okay, so where the FX3 makes its money to me is in the audio, and now both of my cameras are the same, but here's how it works. So there are sort of 2 XLR inputs on this top handle. There's a 3.5 millimeter as well that I use for miking up interviews, but for the most part, I'm using just a 1 input in the top handle. Because of that, because I'm only using 1 input, I am able to set my audio level for just general trackside shooting, right? But it allows me to set a secondary safety channel. So input 1 would be in the left ear, input 2, however I set that, would be in the right ear. And I set that about 30 decibels lower so that if I catch a burnout or if I catch a Porsche going by really loud, I have the option of that safety track. Then when I get in post, I select which version, which track I want to use in both ears. It allows me a bit of a safety net so that if I happen to catch a burnout and I didn't turn my audio down or I'm not managing my audio levels, I'm still able to get that safety track so I didn't clip any of that audio. That's the secret to sort of getting good audio at a racetrack, in my opinion. An absolutely foolproof system. I love this little thing. This is well worth the money to upgrade to the FX3, in my opinion. And like I said, new for this year, I'm using this unit, which is the same sort of unit, but it connects to the hot shoe of my A7S III. And for all intents and purposes, apart from some of the cooling elements that the FX3 has, it essentially turns it into the same camera for me. Would I buy an A7S III and this top handle? Probably not, because it ends up costing about the same as an FX3. But because I already own the A7S III, this little piece basically gives me all the same audio options and audio workflow that I use on my FX3. I'm very excited about this. It was a game changer for me in Daytona, and I look forward to using it more in the future. I have an entire battery compartment. I'm not gonna take everything out. It's basically comprised of 4 of the big batteries for Sony's. I use these in like my monitor, and it has about 8 of these little bitty Sony batteries that I use inside the cameras, along with various chargers. A lot of people have asked several times why I carry so many small batteries instead of just upgrading to a big battery. And for the most part for me, all these batteries get me through an entire 24-hour race without needing to charge anything. But the big benefit to me is because I carry this on my shoulder, I want the absolute lightest kit possible. I don't want to carry a bunch of weight. I don't want to worry about sort of my kit getting bigger and bigger. I want the leanest, smallest kit that I can have so that I can be trackside and sort of move around. It just, to me, it makes me a little bit more nimble, a little bit more quick when I'm running around the track. A little pro side note, I have these little stickers on the batteries that have my name on them. Obviously, a lot of people in the media room are using the same thing, and you work really close with people, and this just helps make sure that people know that these are my batteries. In this little tiny compartment, I have a rocket blower And I have the Hawk Lock piece. I use this as a monitor mount on top of my FX3 top handle. So my FX3 top handle, I put this little monitor mount on it, clip that puppy in. I don't have to screw anything. I can adjust it however I want, and I can take it off super simple. So that's the entire sort of bottom section of my case. Now, I also have pouches in the top of the case that carry various pieces, various tools that help me as well. So I have the Rode Wireless Go 2 mic set up. So it allows me to mic 2 people with just one input, which I really like when I'm having to do, sometimes I'll do various like team shoots or TikTok style things that I'll need to mic 2 people up for. So this kit allows me that option. I carry a trash bag. I have rain covers, but I don't know. It's just I've needed this before and not had it. I haven't used it yet, but I just keep it in my bag at all times. I have a second set of Rode mics. This is just the single input piece, the original Rode Wireless Go. I keep a little Sennheiser lab mic in there. I do the same with the dual kit. These little Sennheisers offer a lot more low end clarity. I find that the Rode ones are a bit tinny. This sounds like a proper lab mic to me. In that compartment, I've got various things, headphones. I've got a 3.5mm cable that allows me to attach it to a phone if I wanted to. In the top part of that compartment, I have various chargers that I use for the Sony batteries. I have a compartment sort of dedicated to stickers and business cards, gaff tape. I also have a little Lewis and Clark lock. It just allows me to tie my case and my book bag to my desk when I leave. There's been some theft like at some of the races, and it just freaks me out. So I've started locking all of my stuff to my desk. Last compartment of the case, I have a little Pelican SD card case that keeps all my SD cards. I have a color checker. Oftentimes I'll use this when I'm doing talking heads so that I can set white balance and color. I have the screwdriver that I use often to put the top handle on my FX3, the little Sony microfiber cloth I got from Watkins Glen, the Sony multi-tool. I don't love this thing because it just spins around all the time, but this has been super helpful. And lastly, I have this little, literally called a lens pen that I use to either brush or rub off stuff that's on the front element of my lens. That's everything that's in my case. That's all the stuff that I take when I go to a race. Doesn't matter if it's a 24-hour race, doesn't matter if it's a half-hour race. I pack everything in this case. This case is, I think it's the Pelican 1516. It fits above in the overhead compartments on airplanes. I don't ever check my stuff. I always take it with me. And I don't have space for things that I'm sort of, you know, cool, super wide lenses that I might use one time a weekend. I don't take stuff like that. I take only the absolute essential stuff that I know I'm going to use week in and week out. It's really easy to think that you're sort of one piece of gear away from making something cool, and it's something that I struggle with as well. I sort of make it a rule to myself. At the beginning of each year, I set off on a mission to acquire no gear throughout the season. So I'll have to do some maintenance stuff like filters if I happen to break a filter, or if I have driver sign the front of a filter. I have to replace that kind of stuff. I understand that stuff, or an SD card will fail. That's a different deal. But I try to pick up no lenses, no cameras, no lights. I try to start the year and end the year in the same place. I think that discipline has been good for my business. I think that it has helped me from sort of carelessly spending here and there on new pieces of gear that don't really add a lot of value, right? There's a diminishing return to all this. If I was to spend $10,000 on gear, am I creating a $10,000 better product? In most cases, no. So I'm trying to spend less money on gear. I'm trying to sort of go with what I have. I love sort of the continuity of my kit. I love not changing things. I know how everything works. I know what I can expect. I know the workflow, and that helps me be fast. It helps me produce good content. I'm not learning out in the field. I hope you enjoyed this one. I get asked what gear I use all the time. It's one of my most popular questions on Instagram. So I'm sort of hoping that this helps shed some light on some of the equipment that I use day in and day out. Again, I've trimmed the fat. I think that I love all of these pieces. All of them serve a purpose to me. I hope you learned something from this one. I get asked the question all the time, what gear I use. People love to talk gear. People love to look up videos on gear. If I'm being honest, I love to talk about gear just as much as anybody else. Feel free to like the video. It helps out a lot, and it's definitely motivates me to continue making content like this. Let me know what you might want to see next, and we'll see you in the next one.